Not sending out photos of my newborn? I gave birth to my first baby on October 10th. When we got checked in at the hospital, my husband and I obviously told a few people, including my parents. My mom's immediate reaction was, "Let us know if you change your mind and want us to come to the hospital." Even though for weeks I said I didn't want anyone at the hospital. Then she said she was packing and said, "We are coming, of course. But not to the hospital." They assumed they could wait at my house. I said no. After 21 hours of labor and 3 hours of pushing, my son was born and we let my parents know. Immediately they were asking for photos. I understand they are excited and already love him, but holy shit, I felt they were being needy and not respecting that I was tired, talking to hospital staff, trying to learn to breastfeed, etc. Once we got moved to a recovery room, my husband and I talked and decided to hold off on sending pictures to anyone, including to his favorite two people, his dad and grandmother, so it's not like my parents were being singled out. I can't really even explain why we don't want to send pics of our son out right now. We both just have some anxiety about sending a photo to someone and then that photo spreading like wildfire to people we did not consent to having a photo of our son sent to, so we've just decided to hold off. Not forever, but for now. We've literally already talked about how excited we are to send our first Christmas cards this year. So this isn't a forever thing. My parents lost their minds. Blew up both our phones, stressed me out to the point of tears, so husband called my dad to ask them to stop, and my dad had the balls to hang up on my husband, and then my dad tells me that him and husband don't need to speak or see each other again. When I was discharged and sent home, I sent my parents 3 texts about us being home and asking to FaceTime them so they could see my son via video since we weren't doing photos. They ignored me. We finally FaceTimed yesterday and my mom told me she had been sobbing all day and it was torture waiting for a photo. I told her she made my labor all about her and that no one asked me and husband what we wanted. It was all about what they wanted. They said they don't understand the photo thing. Everyone else in the world sends photos of new babies. I said I don't care about the world and I totally see how sending a photo seems like no big deal and our decision seems irrational, but you don't have to understand it. You just have to respect it. Well, that didn't go over well. So tell me the truth, am I being dramatic? Am I the R? My mom said I probably cried in the recovery room not because they stressed me out but because I was just hormonal and tired. Be honest with me. Are my husband and I drawing a hard line over something nonsensical? Comment 1. You should have been giving it to them that they were stressing out a new mother and that they should be disgusted with themselves they are doing that to their daughter. Girl, you gotta give it back to them. Go hard. They have no right to treat you like this. I would be doing the same thing if I was in your shoes. You are the mum, what you say goes. They sew it up and deal with it. Comment 2. NTA, I find it a bit odd that you/your husband weren't sending pictures to parents/grandparents during a settled time in the hospital. It sounds like you are close to them, so seems a bit odd that you couldn't request they keep the photos just for them and not share it. Me not understanding that doesn't mean it's a thing to do though. Not getting a picture isn't torture. People are supposed to be supporting a couple who just had a new baby, not adding to stress. OP comment. There are some people in both our families, my mother, husband's grandmother, that even if we said here's a photo, please don't share it around, my mom would have immediately been like, why can't I send this to Susan from work and to Kathy next door? They've known you your entire life and wanna see the baby. And husband's grandmother would have sent it to every second and third cousin whose number she has. So, we decided to hold off. I know we can't hide this kid forever, and damn, it's not like we are some celebrity couple trying to keep our kid out of magazines, but he's not even a week old. Let us keep him to ourselves for just a bit. Story 2. Abandoning my daughter on vacation? My wife and I have always dreamed of celebrating our 40th anniversary with a luxurious vacation. Just the two of us, reliving the romance of our early years. We had it all planned out for years now and were excited beyond words. Enter our adult daughter Jane. Jane and her husband got wind of our plans and promptly invited themselves and their 2 children, 9F, 5M, along. I originally put my foot down and told them this trip was just for us, which upset her some. But my wife has a hard time saying no to Jane, as she is the youngest of our children and our only daughter, and she didn't want to hurt her feelings, so she reluctantly agreed to let them join. I wasn't thrilled about it at the time, but I wanted to make my family happy, and I knew my wife was also okay with the idea of a family trip. Even if she was heartbroken we wouldn't get our romantic trip. We went along with it. The place we were originally going was not child-friendly, so we changed course and decided on an all-inclusive family-friendly resort. We paid for the resort and our grandchildren's plane tickets. Jane and her husband only had to pay for their own airfare. Here's where things get complicated. As the vacation got closer, I started having a change of heart. I realized that our 40th anniversary was a once-in-a-lifetime milestone, and I wanted to honor it in a way that was true to our original plans. My wife and I might not be able to afford a trip like this again for quite some time, and it's something we always wanted to do. So, without consulting anyone, I switched our tickets last minute to go to the romantic destination that my wife and I had originally planned for. I did not tell Jane or her husband. I didn't even tell my wife until the day before our flight left, which was a day before Jane's flight left for their vacation. It wasn't an easy decision and I feel guilty about it. But I wanted our 40th anniversary to be the special, intimate celebration we had always hoped for. We called Jane after we landed to tell her, and she was extremely upset, to say the least. She seemed of the idea that we were going to look after our grandkids, though she and her husband could have alone time, and now that I abandoned her they would have to do it all themselves. I hung up on them when my son-in-law started shouting, and my wife and I enjoyed the rest of our trip. They came back the same day we did but have not answered any of our texts, and Jane seems to be ignoring me. My wife told me she vastly preferred our trip to the family trip we would have taken, but she still doesn't like how Jane is mad at us and wants me to apologize. I'm not sure I want to after learning Jane and her husband were using us for free babysitting and a free trip, but I feel like I should just to keep the peace. Comment 1. NTA: what part of the 40th anniversary trip did your daughter and son-in-law not understand? Oh, boo f who, they wanted to spend time alone and designated the grandparents to babysit on what should have been their special trip. If your daughter and son-in-law wanted alone time on a trip, they could have gone on a different trip and politely asked you and your wife to watch the kids while they were away. Not try and hijack your trip. Do not feel guilty op. Not even for a second. You and your wife have done the parenting of your kids, and now it's time to start enjoying life as a couple again. Sure, you're parents and grandparents, but you're still a couple and deserve to enjoy falling in love with each other all over again with romantic trips that do not include your offspring or grandkids. Your daughter needs a swift kick of reality right in the tuchus. She had the audacity to invite her family to your romantic weekend with the express purpose of securing babysitters so she could enjoy herself without any thought for her parents. The entitlement is mind-boggling. Comment 2. ESH. Jane and husband suck the most for attempting to hijack your anniversary trip as a family get-together in which they'd use you as free babysitting. Your wife for siding with Jane rather than standing up with you for the romantic couple's vacation that you'd envisioned and desired. And, finally, you suck for telling everyone you were doing one thing and at the last minute unilaterally pulling the rug out from under them and not conferring with anyone, including your wife. If the answer to Jane was no, that's fine, but own it and say no rather than pull a bait and switch trick at the last minute. You all deserve each other. Story 3, separating from my husband because of his incompetence. My husband and I have been together for 7 years, married for 4. We have 3 kids under 4, identical twin girls and a baby boy. Our twins were born 3 months early due to my placenta shutting down. It was a scary time in our lives, especially being first-time parents, but our twins pulled through. They have minor disorders, sensory disorder, texture aversion and hypotonia in their arms/legs. They require all 3 therapies weekly. I had managed an ideal schedule for them that works with my work schedule. Over a year ago, I was injured at work. My husband took over therapy. Screwed everything up. I explained everything. I even wrote on a vision board while in my hospital bed. I was down for 8 weeks. He wrecked everything. The therapists were annoyed with him. It set the twins back. When I was on crutches, I kept the vision board in full display. I thought maybe he'd read it every day and have an easier time remembering. I set alarms on his phone, sent weekly reminders. It grew to be very tedious. Fast forward to the present day, I was still in physical therapy. I was walking with a limp. We still had issues with him remembering therapy. The last straw was when I felt well enough to take the twins to therapy, only to find out they'd been dropped from the clinic. Too many missed appointments. I broke down. I was seemingly permanently injured. PT was hard, and now my babies are facing yet another setback. It will take months to get the twins back in. I had been talking to my husband. I never even raised my voice at him. I don't understand how he could be so forgetful, so clueless. I'd had enough. I filed for legal separation. My husband never saw it coming. He cried, said he would do better. I've been hearing that for the last year. He reluctantly agreed to separate and live apart. I moved 45 minutes away in another state that I knew would get the twins back in therapy immediately. We don't have an ideal schedule, but at least they're back on track. I've gone back to work on light duty and still going to therapy. My husband is a good father. He bonds with them, provides for them, but he's incompetent when it comes to their care. My family feels like I'm doing too much. I'm at a low point in my life. I just don't know if I'm making the right decision. I do miss my husband terribly, but he needs to change in order for us to get past this. Comment 1. NTA. This is part of having kids, adapting to them and their abilities. You did a wonderful job by making them go to therapy at such a young age. The younger they are, the easier it is for them to develop properly. Your husband didn't seem to care, so they are now set back developmentally. I'm so sorry you're dealing with so much on your plate. You have truly done your best for your children. I'm sending hugs. Comment 2. I am confused because of this sentence. My husband is a good father. He bonds with them, provides for them, but he's incompetent when it comes to their care. So, which is it? Is he a good father, or is he an idiot who can't so much as get them to very important appointments on time and is damaging their medical future and future health because he can't follow basic instructions? Those two things can't really coexist. Comment 3. I need receipts for his excuses. 'Cause ain't no way he has a reason good enough to explain his absence from these appointments. And subsequent secrecy about missing them. He endangered their children's well-being. This is one of the few times I advocate barring another parent from their children. I take the child support and insist on social worker supervised visits. Obviously, NTA.
Story 4. Telling my husband the inheritance we're getting from my grandparents should go to my sister's kids if anything happens to me. I, 31F, came into a very good amount of money once my grandmother passed away last month. We are still sorting out the details of taxes and retirement, and so on. Just for some background, both my parents and grandparents owned fairly successful companies and made my husband, 33M, sign a prenuptial agreement when we got married. My husband was fine with it at the time and for the most part still is. Now that some of that money is starting to come to us via my grandma's death, things got a bit weird. We don't have kids and are still kind of on the fence about if we actually want them in the future. However, my sister has twin boys and I love them dearly. I'm extremely close with my sister but not so much the rest of my family. My husband has 3 nephews and 2 nieces on his side, and I'm not very close with any of his family. We get along, but I just would consider us friendly. Not close. We were talking about wills to make sure we have everything in order in case anything happens to us. I mentioned that, even though we have a prenup, I'd like to try to find a way for him to get as much as possible. Then I mentioned, if we don't have kids, I would also like a chunk to go to my sister's boys and any other children she may have for college or a house. He became very standoffish and asked about his side. Mentioning it wouldn't be exactly fair to not leave any of the inheritance to them. I said I understood where he's coming from, but we aren't close with them and this money was given to my family. He says I'm being selfish for not including them, but he does see where I'm coming from. He's been making some comments about how he still doesn't think it's fair, and now I'm starting to think I'm a jerk for even mentioning it. Comment 1. NTA: if something had happened to you and you had died before your grandmother, would she have left this money to your husband or would she have given your share to your sister and her children? I work in a job that occasionally receives valuable donations, and a large part of that is making sure to honor and prioritize the donor's intent over whatever the current needs of the organization are. While the money is ultimately yours, I think it's fair to remind your husband that your grandparents worked hard to secure a better future for their family, and it's important to you that you honor their wishes by making sure that money stays within their family should something happen to you. Comment 2. NTA: you can always do a post-nup. Why should your inheritance go to your husband's family as opposed to yours? For now, put the inheritance in an account under your name only with your nephews as beneficiaries. Make sure that's reinforced in your will. And tell hubby if he gets an inheritance, he is free to do the same. Comment 3. NTA: it's like passing family heirlooms outside the family. My husband has an old pipe from his great-grandfather. He can emotionally associate this pipe with someone he loved. But if this pipe had gone to the nephew of the wife's great-grandfather's son, then that nephew would look at the pipe today and think, I got this pipe from some old guy I didn't know. It can actually go in the trash. The money comes from your family, so it should stay there. Your husband himself becomes part of your family through marriage, but not his nieces and nephews.